republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember Redmond. Mayor Pro Tem Stackleth is absent. Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Mayor Kluwer.
Here. And let's welcome Larry Stock up to the podium for a special presentation.
We figured we'll get you in and out.
I appreciate that. All right. Here I have oops, sorry. I got a mess here. Okay. Here's a map, first of all. Discussing. I think you got one by email.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to actually put it up on the screen.
Oh, you have it?
I forwarded to Jeremy to...
Tim, you want one?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. There we go.
So am I on? Okay. First of all, we got the map that is the landing, and that just happens to be what's immediate need. There's lots of places around town that are having issues like this. But I wanted to point this out because in the last 12 months, we've had non-renewals on 6 different commercial properties that adjoin your property. And some of it's in the middle of your property, like the fitness center. Got non-renewed, and you got another one coming again in February for that same building or that same property. And the situation we're in is just really serious. We're critical. And thank God we got this moisture happening, but the stuff keeps growing, and it's something we got to take care of. And so a year ago or a year and a half ago, I contacted my brother-in-law, Matt, and he was aware of it, and then he retired. And so Jonathan's been made aware of it, and I know he's working on it, but the property that you own is a mess. And we got to take care of our property. We got to take care of private properties and public properties. That weed fire could have stopped if these guidelines that you guys have in front of you were followed. People were not taking care of their houses up there. They were not taking care of their backyards. And there's garbage laying all over houses. It's not the houses that start burning. It's all the garbage in the yard. And it just continues and continues and continues. And you guys have a serious problem there around the landing and through it. I don't know what the answer is. You log the whole thing? Probably not. But we need to definitely do some firework so that a fire won't spread in there. We had a situation on the railroad tracks, July. I cannot believe that didn't go. It should have gone. Thank God deputy was there immediately, and firemen were in town. And I think it might have even been a Wednesday night. There might have been training, but we were able to knock that out. That should have burnt the whole thing. I was riding my bicycle up on the trails above Tessa's house, and I could see it from up there, and it was like, oh my God, here we go. Get down. And what are you going to do? Come down and watch it go by like weed? But I just want to bring this to your attention. I want to make sure that your department heads have had it. You've seen it. And many of you that have been on the council for a year, you've seen these emails from me, and I just want to bring your attention to it once again. We do have, the second document is the Safer from Wildfires, so you got the map. This is basically, if we did this, 1, 2, and 3, which, I don't know if you can get to that. Do you want to talk about this map right now? Do you want me to point anything out there? Would that be?
Sure.
Okay. This is a map I used for gaining mini storages right up here. And got a non-renewal on this mini storage, got it replaced, got a non-renewal down here on the fitness center, got a non-renewal right here for Sean Doyle's building, just to have another non-renewal, and one of the other ones here, plus homeowners non-renewals. So here's your border. Okay, this right here is all your property. And the problem we have homeless camps in here. And it's thick. I mean, I live right here. No, right here. And I don't go out there. It's scary. First of all, it's scary because there's people living out there. And two, you can't walk. You can't see that far. It is thick. And it's just overgrown, deciduous. There's some evergreens in there, but it's mostly just deciduous trees and willows and stuff that are just going crazy. And so, you know, this is the inside of the railroad track. This is where your fire happened earlier this year. You can see, man, that if with some wind, that really could have taken off. So with that in mind, that kind of shows where you're at. This is a bad area right here. That mill pond, 25 years ago when I built my first house over there, that was a pond, and then the mill filled it in, cleaned it off, took all the trees out, took all the bark out, and it's a beautiful pond. It should be full with water. There's plenty of water to have that thing filled. If there was water out there, oh my God. And first of all, we'd have a place for helicopters to dip right in town. And it would definitely give some border and some buffer to other fire areas. But, you know, if just for reference, here's the railroad tracks right here. The railroad tracks have a 300-foot right-of-way through there. So a lot of that's their land. But outside of 300 feet, it's all you guys. And then here's where the current cleanup is happening, right here. You guys just finished up that last, I think that was like one of the last brownstone places you had. So just for references.
Great.
Any questions on that?
Chief, you want to add your 2 cents? I know we talked a little bit earlier, and you looked at what we need to do out at the landing, and I think you've gotten some basic estimates per acre.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking the chief. We were speaking earlier about, you know, the portions of the landing that need a lot of attention, and so, Jonathan, if you could share with us what we're looking at in terms of cost per acre, and I guess the other piece of this is once we hear this, it seems like it's something that we definitely should be taking action on. I don't know if we need to agendize this to allow this expenditure at the next meeting, but it would be good to hear from you.
Yeah, no problem. So I was looking it up. Roughly, the city has about 200 acres of bare land. That lot there's around 120-ish. The fire department has taken action on all along from the kind of up there where the old mill pond designator is, along the boulevard all the way to the southern end. And then we've gone from the boulevard to the interstate frontage road with about 100 to 150 foot wide fuel break. That whole bottom end is 10 to 15 foot tall brush. I know you've seen it. I've taken the city manager out there as well. So we've started on a large portion of this. Up there where Larry's talking about, completely agree. It's all overgrown blackberries, willows, and it's just a mess. It's so thick in there that it would be hard for us to go through with chainsaws. Definitely would be much more beneficial just to get a piece of equipment in there. I roughly mapped it out. It's roughly 8 acres. If we were to take across from the boulevard, across that northern portion, back to the railroad tracks, and I can get up there and show you guys a little bit if you'd like me to, and then back down along the railroad tracks, is roughly 8 acres. I did some phone calls. Depending on what kind of treatment plan we want to go with, it's $1,000 to $4,000 an acre right now. If I'm not a big fan of mastication, but I think mastication is going to be the way to go in these blackberries. With that being said, if we are going to masticate it, I think we need to get in there with some kind of herbicide and keep where we can, spray where we can to keep this from coming back. It's going to be a continual process. I've reached out to quite a few different grant companies. We've been constantly looking for a grant. If we could come up with our own machine with a masticator head, we would be able to keep on this with city staff a lot easier. That 8 acres that I'm talking about doesn't even include the orchard property, which is on the west side of the railroad tracks. I was looking tonight doing some rough measurements. That's probably gonna be another 20 acres that we're gonna have to take care of. Basically what we're talking about is when we're trying to take care of it, and we have the municipal code where we can make private landowners do this, is we take and have them do a 100-foot perimeter around their property. Depending on how wide their property is, we can have them put a 50-foot cut down the middle of it. This is just giving us access to get in to where if we do have a fire, we can get in there and make a stop at it. The Roseburg property is big. It's gonna take other cuts, not only the perimeter, but it's gonna take some cuts of fuel reduction down the middle, like below the pond. There's another road just south of there. If we can open all those up, that's gonna give us that opportunity to where if we have someone in there that starts a campfire and it gets away from them, it's gonna give us an opportunity to get in there and catch it. So completely agree. It's something that I know Chief Mello brought this up before he retired. And we've been bringing it up, and I definitely agree it's something we need to move forward with getting that done.
Chief, the section between the boulevard and the railroad tracks, the problem is in there is that you have a different fuel. You've got, it's all pines. And those pines have all been growing for the last 25 years after the mill was taken out and the mill pond was taken out. And those pines, those are the things that are like gasoline. The willows and stuff, they have a lot of water in them. You know, in the middle of July and August, absolutely it's a problem. But boy, you get up there, those pines, and they don't look very big, but there's gonna take, that could be thinned. You could go 100-foot branch tip to branch tip. That's in these fire safe guidelines. You went branch tip to branch tip, 100 feet of clearance. You're talking a lot of trees taken out of there, but there's that tree could be sold. There's something there. It could be used for cogen and weed. Geraldwin is taking trees right now in Klamath Falls, and I'm sure there's other people taking trees. So there may be some marketable things in there, but the problem is it's almost too small. It's probably just something that's going to become biofuel.
So, and I can add to that, this is going back a couple years, we had a contractor that was gonna come in and do this project for us. And it was gonna be at $0 effect to the city. He was gonna come in, marketable timber, what he could, and make that a fuel reduction project. We contacted the contractor. He said he was gonna move all of his equipment in the next day. A week went by, we still hadn't heard from him. We contacted him again, he went bankrupt. So we've been there, we've done it. When we go to redo that, if that's the route we want to take, which I'm all for, I don't think we have a current CEQA on this property, which we're going to have to do. If we're just doing fuel reduction, we're good. We can get in with doing fuel reduction. I agree. When we make people do their clearing, it's anything 8 inches or less. You limb trees 10 foot up or 1/3 the height of the tree. Right now, I know a lot of things are going 15-foot limb tip to limb tip. So when you start talking some bigger trees, that's definitely eliminating a lot of trees. When they're smaller, like I said, most of those are going to be 8 inches or less. We could clear a lot of those out and make a huge project out of it, and it would look good and it'd be fire safe. So,
Chief, if you can come back before the next meeting with a couple proposals, and and I know you've reached out to see if we can rent a masticator. Just what are our options and costs, then we can put it before council.
okay.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Tim.
Chief, actually, it would be helpful for me to show those 8, if you went up there and showed the 8 acres that you're talking about, number one. Number two, I'd like to know the,
So for the acres they're talking up here from the old mill pond, basically runs down through here, if I'm correct?
And then back to the south, along the
And
railroad
back
tracks.
down to here,
And it comes all the way down to where the fire was.
to the fire here. So basically this strip between, so this is the old road that's in there, it comes down, this would be going up onto Old Mill Road here. So this is all just thick. I know this because we chased a guy in there and we literally got stuck. We couldn't even go through there on foot. It's so thick with, we've done a pretty good job of cleaning out here, the camps and stuff with Public Works, but like they say down here, we can't even walk in there. So you see a trail, you can't even get in there. And so this is another area that they're talking about. This is the orchard that we're talking about here. So here, but this right here, this goes right up to people's property. We're literally butting up onto their properties. You got the hotel, which I'm a little too short. We've got the hotel that's right there, the old Pacific Power building and all that. So that's what we're looking at when you're talking insurances. We've got big businesses that aren't getting their insurances redone because of what we have between this road and here. I mean, this would be pretty easy to go in here, but this, they had crews in there working, and you can't cut it out fast enough. It's rolling back, and this is bad. So this is the area really bad.
Okay, next question.
Yeah.
Best time of year to take this action is when?
I mean, obviously, we're not going to be able to get in there right now with the snow. Generally, fall or early spring. It depends on what our weather does. The more moisture we get, some spots the ground will be soft, but all that area up in there is pretty good. So early spring is definitely would be preferred before fire season.
Okay, one more. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just up here, that's good. Down here, having been in there on foot, that is springs and soft. It's kind of like what's on Pine Street where behind the Forest Service building. You're walking along, now you're in spring and you're knee deep because it's mud and stuff. So down here's gonna have some special water considerations, but not up so much up here.
And one more question. We historically, or in the past, were making regular police visits, routes, patrols on the Roseburg property.
Correct, we still do.
To try to keep the homeless out.
So we've been in there, I can look, recently, we'll get a call, we'll be in there, we'll find a camp, we'll let them know they're on private property, they're trespassing, we're moving them out of there. Can't get in there right now because of snow, most of the cars will get stuck and stuff, but we're regularly patrolling. Public Works is down there regularly patrolling, and the fire department is down there regularly patrolling. So we've got 3 different agencies regularly down in this area here. Again, this area, there's no roads, it's all foot access. The only reason I know this is because we chased a person off the railroad tracks and he went in there, and me and my officer, we literally got stuck. So this, it's possible that there's camps and stuff in here because private property we can't come into. We got no access other than foot getting in here. So clearing this out would be huge, especially with the picking up the orchard property here. That would allow us access into this property here. This property here we can get in pretty good and we can see and clear and good.
I was wondering whether you could come in through the orchard property.
So right now, because it's private property, this is all private property, so once the city annexes this,
Well, we
makes
own,
it ours.
no, we own the orchard property.
Okay, I didn't know it had.
That's city-owned property.
So now, but still, from here to here, I'm 5 minutes out of my vehicle, because there's no road, so we can access, walk in, it's all a walk-in show, one officer, and it's too thick, you can't get in there.
Okay, so to wrap this up so we can move on, Larry, I want to thank you for coming out.
Well, I got more.
One question.
Sure.
Well, we've got to wrap and keep rolling.
Okay.
We have a couple more council questions, too.
Okay.
Larry, hi.
Hey,
Just one question. If extensive work is done on the Roseburg property, all of it, and by anybody's conservative estimation, we have cleaned the property up, it is as fire-ready as any place could be.
okay.
Do any of your commercial properties get their fire insurance reinstated?
No, no. Basically, once they non-renew, they don't want to come back here. So Nationwide is taking a 5,280 feet distance from a wildfire area. So the whole downtown now is being canceled if Nationwide commercial's on the policy. And that's not just Nationwide. We've got 4 other carriers that are doing the same thing, but the other carriers are just not writing new. Nationwide's actually canceling people right now. And there's no moratorium or protection for commercial business. You know, homeowners have Laura's homeowner moratorium for anyone within a wildfire within 1 year. 1 zip code away from a wildfire for up to 1 year. But commercial insurance doesn't get that benefit. It's only for residential.
Thank you.
John? Okay, thank you, Larry.
So can I point
Sure.
out this other spot? This is private land over here, and this is a major concern of everyone's. And I understand, maybe put me on for next meeting, I can come back. But that's what that second thing that I handed out, the Safe from Wildfires info, and I know you all have that, so you can look at it without me being here. And the WUI guidelines. We've got to police, and we have got to do, and I know you have a code enforcement officer now, and he's out doing his thing, and it's awesome. But we need to step it up for people, because, like I said, that weed fire, it could have stopped. It would have stopped. If these people would have done this, there was no fuel to burn because there was enough spacing. But when you start getting garbages and fences and old dilapidated decks or whatever and abandoned homes burning, you just can't catch up to it. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Real quick on that, the private property that you are talking about, they just sold, and the new owners are aware, and they've been going to bid for contractors to come in and clean it. So we've been on them. That will be getting done in the spring.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we are moving into public comment, and this is for anything not on the agenda, just general topics. Anyone in the audience wish to come up and speak? Anyone online?
We do have one hand raised right now. That name is Michaela Ravasio.
Okay, Michaela?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is my time starting?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Michaela Ravasio. I'm a prior resident of Mount Shasta. I moved away in 2019 after being illegally and unjustly assaulted by the local police force. I'm here to briefly share what happened and to call upon the city to make amends and take steps towards changing this problematic system. On September 26, 2019, I was biking downtown when an elderly man shouted at me from across the street, catcalling me. I biked over to him and firmly told him this was not okay and to please not do this again. He argued for his right to catcall me, and a verbal altercation ensued on the corner of Mount Shasta Boulevard and Chestnut Street. Shortly thereafter, a police car arrived, and Officer Walter Moore got out and approached me. As I had been verbally harassed, I assumed Moore had arrived to help me. But he instead approached me directly, not the man who had catcalled me, and told me to be quiet. After a brief verbal exchange, whilst I was standing still and quiet, facing Moore, making eye contact, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. I tried to get away, at which point he lifted me up, knocked my feet out from under me, and slammed my body face first to the pavement. Multiple witnesses saw this occur who were sitting outside dining across the street at Bistro 107, whom I have written testimonials from. I was handcuffed, taken to jail in Wairika, and further abused in jail, where I had the crown of my head slammed into a cement wall, amongst other physical and mental abuse. I was not offered the opportunity to make a phone call until far past the 3-hour mark in negligence of California Penal Code. In the months following, 3 different lawyers, myself, and family members reached out to the district attorney many times. We were all ignored and never received any form of response from our inquiries. The original charges, which were battery of a police officer, as Moore claimed I threw a punch at him, and resisting arrest, were never filed. The physical and mental abuse resulted in extreme long-term mental and physical health damage. I experienced prolonged suicidal ideations, PTSD, the loss of my job, and uprooting of my home and life. Physical injuries included head and neck pain for nearly a month following the attack, visible scrapes, bruises, low back pain, and a sore and swollen wrist. I was not capable of pressing formal charges within the statute of limitations following this incident. Now, more than 3 years later, I'm ready to open a dialogue on this event. I would like to establish a dialogue with the best point of contact to explore how our police department can make amends and works towards ensuring there is change to avoid future abuse. I know my case is not a standalone incident. The town manager, Todd, has my contact information. I trust that the city has the best intentions for its community in mind, and that you will handle this situation accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Todd, do you have any info on that? That we were...
So the appropriate remedy for her would be to file a complaint with the police department for investigation.
Okay. Anyone else? Sure. Yeah.
Were there body cameras?
I wouldn't be able to answer anything until I have no idea.
Did our police at that time in 2019 have body cameras?
I believe so, but
Okay.
I'm not,
Yeah, I know you weren't chief then.
we may not even have that anymore. So the appropriate would be to, you can go online or come into the police department, get a citizen's complaint form, fill it out so that we could start investigating it.
Okay, thanks.
And Todd, she reached out to you. She mentioned that.
Yeah, just in terms of the meeting, I hadn't heard any of these details until now. It's disturbing. So it will be investigated, and we'll get to the bottom of it and find out what the story is.
Great. Thank you.
The next hand up is Johanna.
Hello, Johanna. Begin when ready.
Yes, hi, good evening. I just wanted to comment on this Larry, on his presentation. It sounds really good. I didn't catch all of it, but a couple of things I wanted to just note is I was a little concerned about, it sounded like herbicide might be used, and because our city is so much a wetland, and there's a lot of streams, would there be mitigation measures taken so that herbicide does not run downstream into the headwaters, Lake Siskiyou, Lake Shasta, etc. And then a comment on the tipping of the limbs. I just want to bring up, because I've talked to several arborists about this for myself on various, over the years, and not in Mount Shasta, but elsewhere. And tipping limbs can sometimes introduce disease to the tree because it opens up the branch to let bugs come in. And I just want to make sure that you look at that very carefully, because once a tree succumbs to bugs and disease, it actually may be more prone to fire. And then just the last comment, I don't know if he touched on, I heard individual homes, I'm not sure, it sounded more like that one area he was focusing on. But a year or two ago, I introduced something about doing a fire safe and beautification cleanup day so that homeowners and residents could pick up, large limbs and have the city, pick it up when people, phone in to make an appointment. And quite honestly, I heard that it happened, but I never got a notification that this was happening. And it sounds like this might be a good thing to do, because then, people, if they have someone, if they know that this is going to be happening on a regular basis, then they can put their limbs out on the designated day and it'll get picked up. And they can get their gutters cleared and have their, 10-foot radius around the home. And it serves twofold. Not only does it make us more fire safe, but it also beautifies our neighborhood. But anyway, I just never got a notification, so don't know where that's at. Anyway, and that was all. So just a couple comments. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Johanna. Anyone else? Okay, we will close public comment and move to council staff comments. Todd, do you want to lead us off?
Yes. First off, I would like to introduce Ken Kellogg, our new Public Works Director, to everybody. And I don't know, Ken, do you want to? Well, I mean, I can say that Ken comes to us with, a number of years with the feds, with the Forest Service, and he also is a Mount Shasta resident and has worked up here as a professional engineer. Is there anything else I'm missing that you'd like to add to your resume?
I'm
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here in this position. I have been in Mount Shasta 32 plus years. Ran my own consulting firm for 12, way back when. Have been working for the Forest Service since about 2002 until just recently. And it's nice to come back to the city. I've only been working here a week, but it's great that I've actually started renewing some contacts from way back when, making new contacts. I'm very much enjoying it. Getting to know the city again, getting to know the projects that have just been completed and are ongoing, and hoping to contribute.
Mayor, if I may, Ken Kellogg also was previously our city engineer. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And also has 3 sons, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, we have that in common as well. Well, thank you.
We're happy to have you here. Okay. So what else is going on? I've talked a little bit about Matrix Consulting during our fire and police consolidation work. They have wrapped up. I had a meeting with them on Friday. They are coming in the first week of January to present to council, or this first meeting in January to present to council. At a couple meetings ago, we approved an RFP to hire a firm to come in and help us with the annexation process and getting us through LAFCO. And I've been working with a couple of firms, and based on what it is that we want to accomplish, and I'll be bringing this back and agendizing it for the first meeting in January. It looks like to do this work, we'll have a not to exceed amount of $50,000. It's not going to be inexpensive, but we have the money in our Economic Enterprise Fund, which is exactly what this work is, what that fund is for. So I have a firm, Pace is working on not only the McLeod Avenue fix, and we're waiting for a drawing to come back from them, but I have Pace taking a look at the idea of a Chestnut Mount Shasta one-way to get preliminary engineering and a cost estimate so we can go chase grants. And they're also looking at the proposal to daylight Castle and determine what that cost would be. Again, that'll help us chase grants. On another front, Pace is very busy. They are working on preliminary engineering on 3 drainage projects that once we get cost estimates on that, we have a firm that's doing our stormwater drainage study that they will write grants under the infrastructure bill, now law, and hopefully we'll be able to pick off hopefully 3 of these projects, which if we can get these funded, the eventual 218 process associated with this, the cost per resident and per business will be lower if we're able to pay for these through a grant. And there's much more, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anyone else on staff have an update?
Just a reminder, on Saturday the 17th at 5:30 in the evening, Santa's sleigh will be at City Hall. We were trying to figure out how many years we've been doing it, and I'm not sure. It's a long time. So I just want to remind everybody, Saturday night, 5:30, starting at City Hall. We're only doing one night this year. We started that last year. We're not going to do the 2 nights anymore. So.
Thank you. Council?
My comment at this point is it's our last meeting in 2022. I want to wish everyone Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, and
Festivus for the rest of us.
and for the rest, and happy what? Festival?
Festivus for the rest of us.
Festivus
It's a
for the rest of
Seinfeld
you.
quote.
Okay.
I got you.
Thanks, John.
All right, any committee updates?
Oh, committee update, sorry. No,
Okay.
I do not.
I thought that was like a dramatic pause
Sorry,
for something.
I
exciting.
transported to Dimension X for a second. Apologies.
Okay, moving on to number 7, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or had it added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, November 28th, 2022, regular city council meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 11/29 and 12/1/22, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending 11/27/2022. C, approval of 2023 meeting schedule for council, commission, and committees, and city council pre-agenda meeting schedule. D, authorizing the city manager or his or her designee to represent the city in carrying out the responsibilities pertaining to agreements with the State Water Resource Control Board, Resolution CCR 22-38. E, Resolution CCR-22-39, claiming the city's apportionment of local transportation funds.
Move for approval of agenda item 7A through E, including resolution CCR 22 and CCR 22-39, 38 and 39.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 8, public hearing, the first reading of ordinance CCO-22-
No number at this point.
Oh. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta adopting Chapter 5.50 short-term rentals. The background, Todd, do you want to read the background on this, or do you want me to keep rolling?
Feel free.
Okay. In January of '22, the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta adopted a short-term rental moratorium on any new development or operations of said rentals during the time in which a permanent ordinance was being drafted. City staff will present a proposed short-term rental ordinance for council discussion and public input.
So, a couple things. There was a comment received from the public that there was an omission here. There are not 2 short-term rentals in residential areas. It's 22, and somehow that got highlighted and deleted. So that fix. Also, the reference to the short-term rental ordinance that's listed in the staff report should refer to 18.08.765. And so essentially, we have, right now, we have 60 short-term rentals on our books. That, I'm just finding out last minute that that is not just what we would deem short-term rentals. It also includes 3 bed and breakfast as part of that list. The way this is written now is such that if it's adopted as presented, the cap on short-term rentals within residential areas would, the 22 is 1% of the short-term rentals, in the city. And so that would basically, if we pass it, that would cap any short-term rentals occurring in the future in residential areas. If we were also with a 3% citywide cap, and that's to capture commercial and residential, if we were to pass that tonight, effectively puts a cap on short-term rentals in the city at where we are at right now. So one of the things that I think is a good idea, we brought this up before, there was an issue that was brought before council, an appeal on a bed and breakfast. I have John Kenny working on a more stringent definition, which I'll be bringing back as an amendment at the next council meeting in January. So make sure that we can differentiate between the two. And you know, there's a lot of detail in this ordinance, and it's hard to pull it all apart. But you know, I think everybody's read it, and yeah, I'm sure we've got a lot of people that want to comment on it.
Questions? Questions for Todd?
I don't have questions regarding the ordinance. I have comments.
I certainly have questions.
Let me get cozy.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I understand this correctly. We've got 60 short-term rentals currently legally licensed in the city.
Yes, and that includes, so it's actually 57 short-term rentals if you exclude.
Plus 3 bed and breakfasts.
Right.
Is what being proposed also cap the number of bed and breakfasts, or will the new definitions of a bed and breakfast or more complete definition of a bed and breakfast move it outside of the cap?
Well, if we adopted this ordinance as is, we wouldn't need a definition for, if the desire is to limit the number of bed and breakfast, we wouldn't need further definition because, you know, under our number of permits, which includes bed and breakfast, it would cap both.
Right. So currently, as this is being presented to us, the 60 short-term rental cap, 57 SDRs plus 3 bed and breakfasts, that would cap both categories of housing.
Correct, if that's desired, but if we want to separate bed and breakfast,
Okay.
then we need to come back with a better definition of bed and breakfast in January.
Next question. 22 of the 57 short-term rentals that we currently have on the books legally licensed are in R2 or R3. Well, I think there's 1 or 2 in
There's
R1,
1 or 2 that are that had CUPs.
Right.
I believe it's 1. But yes, they're all in residential zones.
My question is, on one hand, we've got a cap percentage-wise, 1% for the residential SDRs and a total of 3
Citywide.
for the whole citywide. But the specific number that we currently have is just a hair off from specifically 1% and 3%.
Like 2/3 off.
What?
Like 2/3 off?
Well, no. I think the total number of houses that we currently have on the books in 2014, which was the last time we took a count, was about 1,800. And
It's lower. I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's lower.
well, but that goes to make my point.
Yeah.
It would need to be 2,000 for 3% to be 60. And I think it's well under 2,000. And that's, so are we really going with the 3% and 1%, or are we actually just going with the numbers that we currently have?
I wish I had the numbers of residences in front of me.
Well, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just, before we go too far down this road.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got to,
Yeah,
they're
just want to know which one we're,
right.
how we work that out. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. My question is, and this may answer some of the speaking points tonight. So our main objective is to make sure that the people that live here have a place to live, and that's where this all started. Would it be possible to lift the short-term rental moratorium on anything zoned commercial only, allowing those particular parcels to put a short-term rental or a hair salon or whatever they want to raise money in a business-like structure? Is that a possibility to meet in the middle, so to speak? Keep residential, keep that hold, but open up commercial.
Of course, the thing to balance that with is the sheer lack of long-term rentals in the city, and will that further exacerbate the problem? But yeah, I mean, sure, if that's where council wants to go, then we could, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from council? No? Okay, we're going to open this up to public comment, and we'll start with the person that signed in. Robert, I'm going to butcher your last name. Oh, he left. Okay. Then public comment is open to whomever would like to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandra Haugen. Just a couple quick comments on reading the ordinance. So I'll pull out the numbers, 5.50.020. You have on there that what constitutes as a bed is a bedroom with a closet. Something to keep in mind is a lot of the commercial buildings that are zoned for this or that have been turned into or that are offices currently do not have closets. They weren't built with closets, so you may want to consider an armoire, an attached, something that holds clothing as an option instead of designating just a bedroom with a closet per se because of those commercial properties falling in that. And even in county, there are residences that were built without closets as well because it's not a stipulation anymore that you must have a closet, I believe. So 5.50.60B, you put in there about the person who owns or the person who's managing has to send in taxes. Something to consider that's an ease for all of you is that Airbnb collects that money and will send it to the city directly, which will save money for all the county, the city, anybody. It takes care of all of that, so it's less money. You still have to have the reporting done by the person who does it every quarter, but just know that you can take that so that people that are in violation and are not doing this correctly that money will still be coming in. 5.50.080, you talk about how this isn't going to renew with a sale, and it doesn't go with the land. So while the county lets it run with the land, I understand where you're coming from, but the value of a property on someone that has a licensed vacation rental is great and is significant, and it does add a significant amount of value to a sale. So it may be beneficial to put in something in there that says that you are giving first priority to those that are in good standing, that do sell their property, or that that will be heard or listened to somehow, so it's not just thrown out automatically. 5.50.70C, throughout the whole ordinance, you've referred to property owners and operators, but then you bring in the word host. For a violation, the host will be sent a notice, the host, so you need to define who host is because you haven't mentioned that anywhere else. And then finally, my last comment would be, if you're going to limit the number, I like the idea of commercial zoning because there's a lot of commercial properties that won't be good long-term rentals, but they are identified as something that would qualify. Is there going to be a waiting list? So if you've capped out at the number that are available, is there a waiting list? Does that stay priority? So when one falls off, does that person get contacted to say there's now an available permit for you? Are you still interested? So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Can you hold on for just a second, please? Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You got questions?
No, this is public comment.
I know, but we can ask questions to somebody who's making public comment.
Sounds like you might.
Correct?
Uh-huh.
You covered a lot of ground.
I tried to go with my 3 minutes.
You used it very, very efficiently.
Thank you.
Can I back up a little bit and make sure that I understand a lot of what you're saying?
Sure.
First was the commercial buildings
Yes.
that have a bedroom but don't necessarily have a closet
Correct.
and not being an expert in this area by a long shot,
Okay.
do armoires or other closet-type furniture count? How does this work?
So I can tell you that of my licensed properties that I have all licensed, there are in fact 3 of them that do not have physical closets in the building or in the bedroom. So we have put in an armoire, or we've put in hooks, or you can put in a hutch that has a pop-up hanger if they have hanging devices, or there are closets in the hallways. But just with your statement in here that says bedroom with a closet, I would just caution you that the commercially zoned properties that are houses that are being used as businesses or bed and breakfasts or Airbnbs, most of them do not have a designated closet in the room.
Okay, thank you. Because you covered a lot of ground. My understanding about when a property is sold, a licensed short-term rental is sold to a new owner. And Todd, please jump in here if I get this wrong. What the ordinance is trying to say, and this will get to a question, I promise, is that there's no inherent right that you pass along.
Correct.
That the new owner simply has to go through the process of filing to keep the
Reapply.
property as a short-term rental, and then they will become a short-term rental.
Okay.
I think that's the intent. The question that you brought up, and I want to make sure I understand what you said, having the new owner have some type of top priority relative to the assignment or reassignment of that particular license?
Correct. So the reason I brought it up in reading the first reading of it, it came across, maybe I read it too quickly, it came across to me that it does not transfer automatically, which in Dunsmuir is the same way, it does not transfer automatically, you have to reapply. But if there's a set number, and if there's now a waiting list or something else, if one is being sold, are they now off and the waiting list takes over?
Right.
Or does that transfer as long as they do their inspection, their permits, their...
Now I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's all for me. Yeah.
So I can, if you want me to, I can address that piece. The intent of this ordinance is that if we're capped at a certain number and a property is sold that has a short-term rental attached to it, again, it isn't, by right that it transfers with the property. But again, we're capped, and so if the party that this property is being sold to is doing their due diligence, they will be the only people that will know that this is coming up, and so they have the opportunity to come in and register it before anybody else does, because they're going to have a priori knowledge.
Anyone else wanting to speak? Public comment? Anyone online?
Yes.
Okay.
Our first speaker online will be Peggy Risch.
Hello, Peggy. Go right on ahead.
Okay. Good evening, council members. First of all, I want to say I do support this ordinance. I do support that R1 is prohibited for short-term rentals as in our municipal code, and that continues. I also feel that eliminating commercial properties from a cap would lead to a massive loss of long-term rental housing, because if you walk down the commercial district, which I have, and you count the number of those commercial properties where people are actually living, and that many of them are long-term rentals, without them being included in the cap, they're going to be prime targets for turning into short-term rentals, and we will lose more of our housing stock. So I would exercise extreme caution from changing that provision in this current draft. I actually think that, you know, my dad was a CPA, so I like to crunch numbers. And actually, in my comments, which I'm sure you all read, I did supply you with the number of housing units that was in our current 2014 to 2019 housing element and what Plan West actually provided us. So I want you to think just a little differently, because what Plan West told us was that right now there are 1,040 rental units. If you took 3% of those long-term rental units, that would result in 31 short-term rentals. If you took 3% away, I guess my point is trying to say is that we only have so many long-term rentals now. And we need to think about not expanding on allowing more by adding commercial properties. In fact, my recommendation is I think the cap should really be lower. I think it should be 2%, which is what was in the original draft to the Planning Commission, which they really didn't get to hear. And I just want to thank you. I do support having a conditional use permit in the R2 and R3 zones. It is still residential, and thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Any others? No? Okay.
I take that back.
Okay.
Our next speaker will be Johanna.
Hi, Johanna.
Hi there. I just want to say I agree with everything that Peggy said. But I was just curious, shouldn't we get our definition first on the STR so that it includes B&Bs, so that we have that, so that the percentages apply to the whole pool? And I was a little confused because if the list currently has 3 B&Bs on there, does that mean those 3 B&Bs were also part of the moratorium? I'm not really sure. I'm not clear on that. I don't know if anyone can answer that, but that was all I had. And then I sent you the letters about what I think should be included in an STR definition, which is vacation rentals and B&B and all of that. But it sounds like that's being worked on. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Johanna.
Our next speaker is Vicki Gold.
Hi, Vicki.
Thank you so much for this. I think it's extremely important that we approve a short-term rental ordinance. And I appreciate all of the work that's gone into this for, well, over a year and a half, I'm sure, and many studies that have been done prior to that. One of my concerns is, just as Peggy and Johanna mentioned, that bed and breakfasts really should be included in the STR ordinance specifically. And the other concern is about the compliance, because in there it states that if they are out of compliance, they have 12 months to remain as short-term rentals. And it really seems that it should be a maximum of 6 months for the existing SDRs to come into alignment with the ordinance restrictions. So I think that's reasonable. 6 months gives them plenty of time to make the changes that are needed. And also, one of the things that's concerning is that they have an unlimited number of children. And I mean, I am all for children and families participating in, the short-term rentals. But if you had 2 guests per bedroom and 2 more guests allowed, and then unlimited children under 5 years of age, in a 3-bedroom house that could have 8 guests with 5 years, unlimited number of children. So I think you should take another look at that. There should be some, because some of these are very small, there really should be a limit about that. I think I strongly support maintaining a prohibition in the R1 zone and CUP for R2 and R3, but I also agree about the danger, although, people buy commercial properties knowing that they have a variety of opportunities with their investment, but having owned one downtown that was historically used as short-term rentals, I couldn't in good conscience keep it that way, even though it was much more lucrative, because there were so many people needing housing. And I think there are many big investors who are wanting to come in and buy those properties up and use them for short-term rentals. And I'd like to see that not wide open and unrestricted. So I'm also concerned about the 3%. I think it sounds more reasonable to make it at 2 as it was originally outlined. And I encourage you to proceed. And thank you very much for the time that you're putting into this.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, last chance for public comment on this in the audience. State your name and where you're from.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Allen from Mount Shasta. And first of all, you've done a wonderful job creating a comprehensive ordinance for the short-term rentals. I know that a lot of us were upset when the moratorium came, and we thought it was maybe just a smokescreen that you were just going to put it off. So when I actually dove in and read what you've done over the past year, very comprehensive and well thought out. I totally disagree with Vicki and Rish and Johanna in terms of the commercial zone. Commercial zone is all about business opportunity. People shouldn't be living in those houses, and if they are, they should be able to still rent them out for short term. I'd rather see you get stricter on the residential zone than start saying that, oh, well, gee, we have all these houses in the commercial zone and people can go live in them, and by not making them STRs, we can open up for more long-term housing in the commercial zone. That's wrong. So I think we should stick to, hey, we still want to be a business-forward town, and welcome to 2023. Short-term rentals are a big business. And I don't think there's any investors coming in to scoop up all this stuff. We're not Dallas or, just those big southern towns that have humongous cul-de-sacs full of houses, and the institutional investors are coming in to swoop them all up. I mean, we still have very limited product and inventory, and, there's no investors that could come in here and scoop them all up. So that's just a unfounded fear. So, bottom line, to me, commercial zone should be very important to have the STRs. I'd rather see you get a little more strict on that residential. Thank you.
Thank you.
Something, I was just going through my notes trying to find the reference for the number of residences according to the latest census. And the number is 1,895. 1,895, and that's where the 3% comes from out of the 60 total.
Any other public comment? Going once? Okay. We will close public comment for this. Come back to council discussion.
There's a lot to this. It seems reasonable that over time, if we have a cap and we're at the cap, that there would be some kind of waiting list for people who didn't have a property and wanted one, and versus when a property was sold and the new owner wanted to keep it in STR, that there would be some priority given to the existing owner or the new owner versus some waiting list that was waiting to get, because eventually it'll happen where somebody will buy it and not turn it into an STR. I think that seems like a reasonable, albeit small, but important, I think.
That's fair.
Aspect. I have mixed emotions on unlimited licenses down in the commercial area, but for completely different reasons that have been brought up here. Yes, the commercial district is for business. And short-term rentals are clearly a business. And as a town that has a large investment in tourism, when you are we're not a one-trick pony, but when you have a large investment in a particular segment, and that segment takes a hit, well, the whole town takes a hit because we're so invested in that. Longer term, just something to consider and talk about up here is the maintaining properties that are currently homes for businesses that will be engineering firms, consulting firms, a retail, a slew of other categories of business that can also go into a home, redone or not. The point being, a long-term thought about, are we going to try and protect commercial businesses in the commercial district for businesses that aren't short-term rentals, meaning people get wild that we have 7 crystal shops and 7 or 8 different coffee houses, and yet we've got in the neighborhood of 28 or 25 short-term rental businesses in the commercial district. And diversity, I think, of categories of business is, I think, worth protecting, because I don't think, at least currently, and maybe I'm wrong here, but we don't have a problem trying to house tourists. We have housing, be it short-term rentals, B&Bs, or hotels. We have housing at the moment. What we don't have is a lot of diversity of other categories of commercial businesses. And just a thought relative to having it be unlimited on the commercial side. That's all for right now.
Tim?
You want to have John go first, because I don't want to monopolize.
Okay.
All right. As the mayor said, the reason that we decided to take a look at short-term rental ordinance is we have a housing crisis in Mount Shasta. We have people who can't find a place to rent or a place to live in Mount Shasta. Years ago, with a different city council composition, I had suggested we put a cap of 25 units on short-term rentals. It didn't pass. I think that putting a number cap on short-term rentals is appropriate, at least for the foreseeable future, so long as, or as long as we have a housing crisis in Mount Shasta and people can't find a place to buy or a place to rent in Mount Shasta. From my perspective also, we should prioritize long-term rentals over short-term rentals, because long-term rentals are needed for people to live and work in Mount Shasta. We previously made a commitment, a proposition, as a city council, that anyone who works in Mount Shasta should be able to live in Mount Shasta. We found that short-term rentals have helped make that all the harder. We do know that housing is going to increase over the next 2 to 4 years. We can anticipate that there might be 25 units going into, Chestnut and Ida? Ivy. Chestnut and Ivy. We also anticipate that the 10-acre parcels owned by the Moss Trust will likely be sold and turned into housing. If we have a percentage of housing instead of a number cap, that means short-term rentals increase. Short-term rentals allowed would be higher regardless of whether we have ended the housing emergency or not. So before we think about increasing the number of short-term rentals and using a percentage instead of a number cap, I suggest that at least for purposes of this time, recognizing that we have a housing emergency, a long-term housing emergency and shortage, that we put a number cap. We can always change the ordinance later on when there's no longer a long-term housing emergency or long-term housing crisis. But I would encourage us to have a number cap rather than a percentage cap. That's number one. Number two, increasingly, city planners, city officials have recognized the importance of having long-term housing in downtown commercial districts so that you don't have a dead zone after 5 p.m. Mount Shasta has been very fortunate over the years because we have historically had people living in the downtown areas in the commercial districts, C1 and C2, that allow for housing, residential or commercial. I previously owned a building that was both commercial and residential. Commercial downstairs, but long-term residential upstairs. There are any number of properties in Mount Shasta that have commercial downstairs and residential, long-term residential upstairs. I think it's important for us as a city and to maintain a viable downtown, a viable city, to keep those long-term residentials. In addition to the second-story long-term residential units, as Nicholas pointed out, there are any number of homes in C1 and C2 that are currently being used as residential, long-term residential. For the same reason, to maintain that viability that other cities are trying to now achieve to bring back. I would not be in favor of expanding short-term rentals in the commercial areas. And I would ask other council members to think about that and leave the long-term residential units as they are, rather than giving the local realtors incentive to further commercialize and eliminate long-term residentials into short-term residentials. I have some editing, I have any number of editing comments that don't necessarily affect the intent of the ordinance, but would further clarify the intent of the ordinance. And of course, one of them had to do with changing host to operator, that sort of thing. What I would prefer to do, rather than going through each and every one of these.
Oh, please no.
Yeah, is to obtain a word perfect or word, obtain this ordinance, draft ordinance in a word perfect or word format so that I could make the editing suggestions and submit that to staff and make it available to council at our next meeting. I found some of the language as it exists to be ambiguous to the extent that it could be tightened or some of the terms could be eliminated. You know, by way of an example, in .050 inspections, we talk about inspected by the city and the Mount Shasta Fire Department. Well, the Mount Shasta Fire Department is part of the city. So why are we using those two different terms? And why are we having proposing an annual inspection by the fire department and a not less than every 3 years by the city? That's the sort of thing that could be clarified.
Yeah, so that issue is, and we can figure out how to clarify that. It's not just a fire department inspection, it's a code enforcement inspection. So we can state the two.
I would, if I may, instead of handing over the Word document, that could create some bias that the other council can't see. So there might be a better procedure for that.
Historically, we have been able to do that and make it available to everyone. It's not as though you, Mayor, would not receive a copy of that at the same time that the city would be. It's just a way of shortening the process. I can certainly go through all of these various.
Well, I would just ask that city staff comb through it first and like something like that that would be particulars that you would know that we may not, to clarify before it gets to us.
There's going to be any sort of substantive changes to the ordinance that will need to come back for a first reading again.
Yeah.
And I recognize Mayor doesn't know everything about my background. I hope that you would trust me enough in terms of my ability to read and write provisions. To give you some idea of my background, I basically wrote the Alaska state statutes as to the anti-housing discrimination statutes.
No disrespect to you, Councilman, but they did just find an error with what you were saying, so that's why we have to vet it through all the necessary channels.
Well, yes. My intent is not to make substantive changes, and if I were to propose substantive changes, I would note that so that everyone is aware of it. Not trying to put anything past the mayor or anybody else here.
I'm not insinuating that. I'm just
Okay.
making sure we're all on the same page with what will be in the ordinance that represents all of us collectively.
That's the intent. There's, there were some language like other. Well, that's not really quite clear. I think if we talk about potential disturbances or nuisances, that makes the provision clearer. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We have the first reading as presented to us. You are going to submit to staff another version with all the changes that you're going to recommend. It would come back to us, we would see both versions, and
That's what we've always done in the past.
okay, so we'd see clearly every change that was there.
Yeah.
Kathy, is that okay
When-
with you?
When changes are made, they're made with in red or underline or cross outs, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
the
it's-
issue arose when you asked for the Word document. So just for
The what?
the Word document, that means that you'll be editing the original document. So if we have the original and your proposed, then we can see the differences. That was my point.
Exactly right. Yeah. So let's go back to, I think, the fundamental issue that, and also I think that hotels ought to be excluded from the definition of STRs and
They are.
dealt with separately.
There,
Pardon?
they are.
Okay. Because I thought it said included, but not limited to, and it mentioned motels and hotels.
No.
And okay. But, good. So I think fundamentally, the big issues would be a percentage or a number cap going forward, because that is a substantive change. And then the question that you raised about making commercial areas exempt.
John?
Are we voting on this soon? I really have to use the bathroom.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
He's wanting to
Are we voting
recess.
soon? I really have to use the bathroom.
I would recommend, and this is not as I usually do things because I like to get things done, without Councilmember Stackfleth here in this important issue and some changes already need to be made, perhaps we bring this back to the January meeting with Councilmember Stearns's changes, and I'm not sure how we vote or not on whether to exclude commercial. Maybe we have the option at that time.
And I think this is what Councilmember Stearns is alluding to, is that you guys go through the discussion and determine whether or not you're going to have a percentage or a cap, as well as what you're going to do with the commercial zones. Once you make that decision, we can bring back the amended ordinance for a first reading. So you won't be voting on the item tonight, you would be continuing it to the January meeting.
And one thing that would help me is to know council's direction on whether the cap should apply not only to short-term rentals, but to bed and breakfast as well, because then we don't need a requirement for, if that is the case, then we don't need to define those two terms. They're just, other than listing them out and saying that these are covered under a hard cap or a percentage cap.
We probably don't know that
Okay.
collectively,
All
I would imagine.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a substantive change that one of the speakers mentioned, and I agree with, is if property is not in compliance, I would recommend a shorter period of time to bring them into compliance. But if they're not in compliance now, if they're a lawful short-term rental, but they're not in compliance, and my question in my own head is, why aren't they in compliance? Are they not in compliance because they haven't paid their taxes, because they haven't done proper reports, et cetera, for existing requirements? And if that's the case, why would we want to give them a pass or priority?
Do we need a formal motion to move this into next meeting?
Just general consensus.
Okay. Okay. We all agreed to continue this on? Okay.
agreed.
Okay. We're going to close number 8. And number 9, review goal setting workshop and summary of city staff properties from Todd.
Sure. So we had a goal-setting workshop that was open to the public. We didn't have any participants show. There has been some call from the public to hear what the goals and objectives that we discussed, and we never took a formal action on whether these are the items we want to move forward on. I just realized this afternoon that these notes didn't go out into the packet. That was an oversight. I know you guys all got copies of it separately, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the items on here just to for the record, to get people on board. So the first is look at ways to daylight Castle Creek with potential new development on city-owned land in that parking lot adjacent to it. Pursue the idea of a one-way couplet with Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard, and do preliminary engineering and seek grants for that. The adoption of a parklet ordinance to go before the Planning Commission that formalizes outdoor dining in an appropriate manner. To explore Centennial Park and potential revitalization. Explore sources of urban design funds to help activate Chestnut Street, for instance, benches, lighting, street trees, and develop an ordinance that through attrition, residential structures on Chestnut as they go through their youth, through their normal lifespan, and redevelopment occurs, that anything that is built is of a commercial quality that holds the street line, which makes it appear more like a commercial district, which is why Mount Shasta operates quite well and Chestnut doesn't work as well. The other is to pursue an enhanced infrastructure finance district. If the city can partner with the county and backstop the city's general fund with the county's general fund, we'll then be able to get infrastructure in the ground on the Orchard property and on the landing more quickly. If we go it alone, it will take more time. And again, this goes down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but if the city has to go it alone, we can also explore things like if somebody wants to develop on that site and they can put in infrastructure now, we can sign an agreement that as we harvest enough tax increment that cost of that infrastructure would be paid back over time just to get stuff kick-started now. Execute elements of the active transportation plan. Continue to work on annexation, which we've talked about through that RFP, through the LAFCO process, and what we need to convince the county supervisors that this is a good idea. Continue, obviously, the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which is well underway. Continue with water line and water tank improvements, which we're in process on. Continue to pursue the well deed from One Shasta LLC, which is in process. We have lease exhibits that have been put in front of the owner for the transfer of that well to the city as part of the development agreement. Look at the Armory site for co-location of a new city firehouse and potentially sharing the space with the CAL FIRE hand crews. And then what we're talking about tonight, codify the short-term rental ordinance. And then finally, to pursue entities that want to locate at the landing and at the Orchard.
City Manager, would it be okay if you put those written notes in the next City Council agenda so the public can have access to it?
They'll be in the next packet.
Yep, thank you.
And I think, Kathy, we can put those online, correct?
That's a good question. Do we have public comment on this? I don't know.
Tim, any questions for? No. Okay. Okay, we'll open up for public comment. Anyone online?
We have one hand up, Peggy Risch.
Peggy, go ahead.
Going through those priorities, I do have a question about where exactly is the Armory property? That's one, which you said was a possibility for a new fire station that could be shared with CAL FIRE. So where is that Armory property? I'm not familiar with that term. And under the transportation plan to pursue some policies there, perhaps you can just give a very brief description of what that is. I'm totally unfamiliar with what that might include. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else? Okay, close public comment. Any discussion?
The Armory property is at the corner of Rockfellow and either,
Everett Memorial.
I was going to say Rockfellow or Everett Memorial. Rockfellow, yes, in Washington.
We own the ground lease, the feds own the building.
Yes, and actually, the feds had talked about possibly giving back the National Guard Armory to the city if they were to move down to Reading. That was about 2 or 3 years ago.
That has been pitched recently.
Okay.
Okay, no action on this item, so we'll move to number 10, no outside reports. 11, future agenda items and meetings appearing on the agenda within 60 to 90 days. A special meeting to appoint Recreation and Parks District Board member on the 9th. B, special meeting to appoint planning commissioners on 1/23/23. C, special meeting to appoint committee members to 2023. D, discussion and possible action, McLeod Avenue parking prohibition, TBD. E, feasibility and cost study for one-way couplet, TBD. Discussion, possible action, sidewalk maintenance, responsibility and options, TBD. G, discussion and possible action, affordable housing ordinance, TBD. H, approval of RFP to seek company specializing in tax sharing agreements, to be determined. Resolution approving annexation of various properties, to be determined. Discussion and possible action, home insurance issues, and K, bed and breakfast ordinance amendment, which we now know will be at the next meeting. Any others?
No.
I wrote something down here. John? The only other thing I had was just to make sure we have an expenditure ready for the cost of the fire fuel reduction thing. All right, and we are adjourned.
Great job for you. God, how?
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. Oh, no, he's not feeling well.
It was his turn to get it.
It was his turn to get it.